Welcome to HR Voices, a podcast for independent HR and people professionals and the businesses they support. HR Voices is brought to you by the expert team at HR Independence Limited. We hope you enjoy.
Hello everyone and welcome to the next edition of the HR Voices podcast. Today I'm joined by my co-host Mary Asante. Hi Mary.
Hi Charlotte.
And we also are joined today by a guest, Anne Cannings. Hello Anne.
Hello.
Hi,
Charlotte.
welcome.
Hi,
And Anne is from an organisation called Retirement Pathways. And actually what she's going to do today is talk to us a little bit about having those retirement conversations and actually how we need to start thinking and planning about retirement. So I'm going to ask Anne to give us a little introduction. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Anne, and what you do.
Okay, thank you very much, Mary and Charlotte. So I first started working with people in retirement back in the 90s when I was in HR. And in those days, we only gave retirement planning sessions to the very senior people. And it was always in a lovely hotel with a lunch. And we wheeled on a financial advisor to talk about their pensions and their investments. And then we wheeled on a nurse who would chat about keeping fit and well. And then somebody who came to talk about keeping yourself busy and motivated. And that was it. And I look back at that and I think, wow, that was all we could do for people. And now I know so much more. So after a career of leadership, exec coaching, development, training, I bumped into retirement planning again a few years ago. And this time there is so much more research about what people experience, how we can help them, what they need to work on. And that really got me going. So I've been shifting now in full time into retirement coaching and retirement planning. All the non-financials, I would add. There are people, financial planning is thoroughly and heavily regulated, and that's not what we do. So I feel like I've come full circle. I just wish I knew 30 years ago what I know now in terms of helping people plan and prepare for retirement.
I guess when we get there, it's all a bit too late, isn't it?
Yeah, it's never too early. First message, it's never too early.
Absolutely. It's a really important topic. And it's almost become one of those where I still remember those years when you could sit down with senior members of staff and then have conversations around when are you planning to retire and are you planning to save like your retirements in terms of reduce your working days, etc., and all those things to help, especially with succession planning within the organization and all. But of course, things have changed quite significantly over the years. And it's almost become a taboo subject, isn't it? You can't sit down with somebody and ask them, when are you planning to retire? Can you? In most organizations or most industries anyway.
Yeah. I think that's the first thing for HR people. It's been one of those topics that everybody tiptoes around. So talking to HR people, they're saying, well, I'm frightened to have that conversation because people think we're trying to push them out or I'll end up with a constructive dismissal. Organizations are terrified to introduce it for the same reason, generically. Line managers are terrified of talking about it for the same reasons because HR people say, we'll be very careful. And then individuals are stuck in the middle of that too, because they also sometimes would like to bring up the topic, but they're frightened of doing so because they'll think, well, especially in the current climate, if there's a redundancy program, I'll be the first person on it, or that's it, I'll be eased out the organization before I'm ready. So it's the elephant in the room, I think, at the moment in organizations. There isn't a simple solution to that, but there are things you can do.
Yeah, I think that is what it would be good to explore in our discussion today, what HR can do to help people. Yeah. I think legally anyway, people can work till about 75 before they retire, isn't it? Or beyond if they want to, when they are older workers in the workforce. So state retirement age is also going up significantly from where it used to be when I think around 50, most people would have been thinking about and talking about retiring. And so there is a significant difference. So then I think there must be something that we can do as HR professionals to help people who would like to around the workplace these days. It's become an uncomfortable topic generally, I think from HR and management point of view, as well as from employee point of view, because much as HR and managers or senior leaders of organizations find it uncomfortable to approach people to say, hey, are you thinking about retirement, Mary? Equally, the employee would also be quite uncomfortable broaching the subject with their employers, because actually, like you said, what if I do and there's a restructuring or redundancy or something lurking in the background that I'm unaware of? Do I get bumped to the top of the list because I've gone and started asking about retirement and all that? So my point or question was, there must be something that can be done, and I hope we cover it, for both the benefits of the employees and the employer, to make that conversation a little less mysterious.
Yeah. I think the first thing is to normalize retirement, is to normalize thinking about retirement in the workplace. And we've been able to normalize so many other things. We've been able to normalize discussions around bullying, harassment. Hopefully those are much easier than they used to be. People highlight issues much easier than they used to. Sexual harassment, all the changes around there. So I think we have started to normalize various things in the workplace, and this is just another one.
Yeah.
And the way organizations do that is they put processes in place, they publicize things. So that's partly about putting those words out there about this is a normal thing to talk about.
Again, so what you're saying is embrace it and incorporate it into your culture so that it becomes an easier topic for people to discuss within the workplace. So that if I say, hey, I'm thinking about retiring tomorrow, you don't hold me to it to say, you said you weren't going tomorrow, why are you still here?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think partly that, I know, like with everything we know from HR, it's all about training up your managers to do these things, or all the skills that they need to have these conversations. So training up managers, just as we've been training them to sort out various performance issues for many years, is trained to have that conversation about, okay, so if you do say that to me, my next piece of my next conversation isn't, so when's the date then, and can we make sure we do it? It's much more around how you're getting on. I think putting it as part of people's ongoing development as well. So different ways, practical things organizations can do. Some of the simplest things is to put some information on your shared drive or your intranet or wherever you hold central personal development information. So if you, particularly some organizations will pitch it under their wellness offerings. So one of the things we can do is we can offer you access to resources. There are hundreds of books, podcasts, TED Talks, all sorts of free resources out there. Just signpost those, normalize that conversation. And obviously great if you can offer some seminars or workshops or webinars, which doesn't say, you're on a list. It just says, do you know what? In maybe 5 years' time, you're probably going to retire. We're all going to retire at some point, just as we're all going to die at some point. It's one of those things. So why don't we just normalize that and say, everybody should be talking about this. Everybody should be thinking about what happens. And if you're 45, 50, I mean, I'd even work with people in their 30s, but normally it's people in their 50s. You should be thinking about this anyway.
But it's interesting, isn't it, Anne? Because if you think about it, I would have said probably, you know, 18 months, 2 years ago, there were two elephants in two different rooms. There was the flexible working one, where nobody could talk about flexible working, and you couldn't come into an interview and ask whether you could work flexibly. And it was a sort of a game of chess, really. I'll put my piece here and you put your piece there, and when we'll see who's going to break first. And eventually it comes out in the conversation, then it's all a big shock, and everybody's, oh no, we can't do that. Now that we've normalised that with the changes to the flexible working legislation, so day one, right, it's an easy conversation. You can walk in, sit down in an interview. There's no second guessing, no positioning. We can just say, I'd really like to do 4 days a week if possible. And it just makes the conversation more grown up and much, much easier. And what organisations don't want to do is end up in a situation where they can't have the conversation about retirement. And so everybody plugs along. They might not have too much in progress in the way of succession planning. And then bang, I'm going to retire next month or 2 months' time. And suddenly you've got no succession plan. The conversation hasn't been had. It's all a big shock. We don't know how we're going to get all that information out of somebody's head that they've been working on and carrying on for the years they've been in the business. And we've got a real lost opportunity.
Yeah. And that's the normalization of it. And I think the flexible working conversation is a great one to hang it on as well. So we talk about practical things. And if someone is coming to you and saying, I'm thinking of dropping to 3 days a week, can we do that? Or I'd like to rearrange my hours in some way. That may be an indicator that they're thinking about moving towards retirement. So one of the things we often, when we work with people, is we recommend that tapering approach if possible. So one of the...
Shall we talk about what retirement planning is then, so that people really understand what it entails?
Yeah, that's good. Well, there's different aspects to it. So, and gosh, I need 3 or 4 days to go through it all, but we'll try and summarize it.
In 60 seconds. But
So there are, I guess, 3 main aspects. There are the psychological transition, the huge shift that people go through. There is some practical financial planning and some legal planning, which we would always recommend people undertake. And then there is the whole topic of leaving work well, not leaving unfinished business, making sure your succession planning is in place, and having left in pleasant, good terms, if that's possible. It's a big, significant change. So they're the 3 key areas, and each one of those will break down into much more detail. Specifically with the psychological side, because that is so huge. So if you think about it, I mean, some of the people listening to this will have made the leap from working in corporate to running their own businesses, and that probably felt quite scary at some point. But at least you knew roughly what you were moving into. And if we're lucky, you've done some planning to do that. Now, imagine you're moving out of corporate and you don't have any plans. You don't know what the future looks like. And you're probably not going to be doing what you spent the last 20, 30, 40 years doing. You're going to say goodbye to a lot of work colleagues. You're probably going to be around your partner. If you have one, much, much more. There are so many unknowns, and the significance of the change is far greater. Everybody's familiar with career planning, career progression. People have career coaches helping them get new jobs. We mentor people who want to start their own businesses. Why would you not do something for someone who's making probably, apart from the shift into work, the biggest shift is probably out of work or a different work style?
Totally agree with that. It's a massive shift, because if you consider someone who's probably been working for 40, 50, 60 plus years of their life in various guises, etc. And work is a huge part of all our lives, regardless of how you look at it. And given that it's a massive shift in your lifestyle. Yeah. So I totally agree with the fact that, yes, you probably need retirement coaching, you need mentoring, or you need some sort of planning around, okay, when am I going to retire? How am I going to do it? What am I going to do after this when I hang my boots up? Because those are very important, isn't it? You can't go from busy 5 days a week to, no.
Yeah.
It's probably not good for the body or the brain anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
I could work with it. I could go with it.
you
But
know,
it's
when I speak to people who have retired, and you probably know this more than I do, some of them end up saying, "Well, I'm busier now than I was when I was working."
yeah,
So
Yeah,
yeah.
you probably wonder how you ever found time to work, don't you? I mean, I was like that when I
Yeah.
was on maternity leave. I thought, my goodness me, how did I actually fit a job in?
Yeah. And that's a really common thing for someone who has made that transition effectively. And let's be honest, for most people, it takes between 2 and 5 years to really make that psychological transition and get to that happy place, if we call it that. So yeah, that you often hear people say, "Oh, I don't have, how did I find time to work?" But if you look around, they're doing lots of things. They've probably slowed down a little bit, and I don't mean in a sort of an elderly, cricked back, no longer fit for purpose way. They're taking their time over things, they're enjoying things more, they're probably seeing friends more, doing more social things. So, when people say, "Oh, I've slowed down," that doesn't mean they're doing less things, it just means they're doing things in a different way.
But they're probably doing them in a more reasonable time frame as well, because if you think about, a lot of our members of HRI and a lot of small business owners and other consultants out there, it's a long old day, because when you're running a small business, there's not just the delivery to clients, there's all the other things that need to be done. And actually your working day is far longer than it probably should ever be. So slowing down means actually 9 to 5, not 8 till 10.
Yeah. And it often means about full attention too. So as working people, we're often in the middle of something else. There's a ding on the phone. We'll go and attend to that in the middle of a phone conversation. How many people are on listen to a podcast, a webinar, but they're also doing their emails? We're multitasking a lot. And so one of the things people say is, I pay attention. Actually, my conversations with people are far richer. So there's a lot to be said for it. And you need to plan for that. So if you're not planning for that, it can all come as a pretty nasty shock. And as HR people, we have a responsibility, I think, to help people make that transition.
absolutely. And I think that's the bit the workplace can facilitate without focusing too much on the when, but focusing on what that transition might look like for people.
Yeah.
And you talk about the financial aspects of it as the second part of it, which I think most people are probably more familiar and relate that to retirement more compared to the other two, which is the psychological and the legal aspects of it. So let's touch on the finances a bit. When do you really have to start worrying or thinking about your pension or your retirement money? Or why should you bother?
So if you talk to a financial advisor, and before anybody says, "Oh, well, I don't have enough money to have a financial advisor," which I was in, I know I'm not a wealthy person, I don't need a financial advisor. If you talk, now I work with lots of them, I am associated with lots of them, they will tell you, one is you don't have to be wealthy. This is about making the best of the money you have. And a good one is not that expensive. They should be saving you money. Secondly, their argument would be is you should be starting the minute you start work. So for most people, that's their teens or 20s. So anybody listening going, "Well, I haven't started my pension yet and I'm 45 or whatever," it's never too late. And it's also never too early. Same with all planning. So the earlier the better, but certainly by mid-40s, mid-50s, you should be having conversations about, where's this going? How long when might I wanting to take it? Of course, financial advisors are a bit stuffed now because they thought they knew what all the tax regimes were. And at the moment, that's all being revisited a little bit and is fast changing. But even so, a lot of them can be advising you on the most tax efficient way of doing things, how much should be put away, how much extra could you be putting away, and how to make the best of that. So really, you do need to have those conversations, certainly, I would say, by your late 40s, early 50s.
Let's touch on independent consultants as well. So, yeah, running my business and whatever, should I worry about my retirement or pension pot, or should I not really bother?
Even more so, because for most of the clients you'll be working with, they'll have schemes where the employer is contributing a percentage as well. If you're independent, chances are that's probably not happening unless you're operating as a limited company and you're also putting stuff into your own pension scheme in some way. So you should be talking to your accountant about how do you do that? What's the most tax efficient way? I mean, I've run my own company for 20 odd years. I'm always looking at the forecasting and thinking, actually, where's the extra that I personally can put in to manage my tax? But also, is there a company, a bonus, if you like, that I need to be putting in there as well? The secret to financial is compound interest. And if you don't know what it is, go and look it up because it's fabulous stuff, which means the earlier you put it away, the harder it works for you. It is the gift that keeps on giving. So if you're independent listening to this, you need to be looking at your own one as well. And you need to be thinking about your own exit strategy. So even if you're in the first 6 months of your business, you're thinking, Anne, I'm barely set up yet. I'm barely going and I'm phenomenally busy. Even if I'm not phenomenally busy, you need to be thinking about what is this actually for? And so we often know a lot of financial advisors, the really switched on ones, won't just be saying, here's what your pot's worth or here's what it could be worth. They should be talking to you about, well, actually, what is it for? And that's the conversations I'll be having with people saying is, well, it doesn't matter how much you squirreled away or not. Actually, what we want to know is what does a good lifestyle look like for you? And a lot of people listening to this will be saying, actually, I got out of corporate because I didn't want 24/7 working. I wanted some control. I wanted some work-life balance. Yeah, retirement's a similar conversation. How will it map out? What will it look like? So we do visioning techniques with people. We will ask people to imagine a good life. And a good life doesn't necessarily mean that you've got millions in the bank. I know some really unhappy, wealthy people. And I know some really happy people who would not describe themselves as particularly wealthy. So the money is there for a purpose. It's an enabler. It shouldn't stop you or enable you to do what you really want to do. So we'll be talking to people about what's the most creative way you can achieve things. And of course, while you're still working, how do you manage your affairs to make some of that very possible, to make the best use of your money?
Such an interesting point, isn't it? Because if you think about it, when we talk to a lot of independents, because that's the business we're in with our members and stuff, but we always say right back at the beginning of the journey, what's your goal? Where do you think you want to take this? And you don't realise how important that question is actually until you get a little way into your consultancy journey. And I mean, I'm now in the prime of the age range that you're talking about. And I am starting to look at where am I taking the business? What do I think I'm going to do next? What's it going to give me? How's it going to help me retire, slow down, whatever? So it's such an important thing, but you just don't realise at the beginning how important it is.
And giving time, we all know change takes time. We all know that from all our careers. You have big plans to do things. It always takes longer than you think it will. So the earlier you start, the better. One of the reasons I've shifted away from doing leadership, management, exec coaching, all those things, which I've done for forever, is actually to simplify my working life a little bit. So I'm really niche now. And I'm enjoying the learning, I'm enjoying the new challenges. And there's lots of people doing what I used to do, so they don't need me anymore. And so enjoying that, but thinking that is part of my retirement journey. So I'm living the dream in a way. That's how I like to think about it. I'm living the dream.
You're bringing lots of people along with you.
Yeah, I'm enjoying experiencing really what some of my clients experience, what the people I talk to, because there is no other journey like it. And it is phenomenal. And it does bring so many challenges. So we talk to people who think, oh, I'm going to spend more time with my family, with my grandchildren. Well, anyone who's a parent will know that children's lives now are often quite hectic, very structured, probably got a busier diary than most of us working people. And actually a grandparent rocking up and saying, well, I thought I'd take everyone to the park on Saturday because that was their childhood dream, isn't always welcomed. We get the converse too, which is where people say, oh, yeah, I want to do this and this. Travel is a big one. But all their family sees free childcare. And
Yes.
actually having that honest conversation way up front. So these are things, if you're working with some employees who maybe are skirting round, or they say, oh, I'd like to work part-time. Okay, what are you thinking of doing with the time? What's driving that? If you've got the quality of relationship, you can have that conversation safely and confidentially. Be aware of people saying, well, I thought I'd spend more time with the family. I mean, check out, do they want to spend more time with you? Conversely, if you've got big plans, are they just seeing free childcare zooming up? Because big problem. And the other side of that is what's called the silver splitters. So we know divorce rates are highest in the 50-55 plus group. And that's probably because they're looking at each other across the breakfast table one morning going, is this it? So helping employees think through what their plans are. Lots of people listening to this will have great coaching skills, and using just some of those coaching skills to gently tease around people what their thoughts are and what their plans are.
And then the final bit that you touched on was the legal aspect of it. Tell us a bit more about the relationship with retirement.
Yeah. So this is the shocking bit. Again, it's one of those things where really all of us should have a lot of this stuff in place very early. But it's for most people, it'll be the point where they do start to think about their own mortality a little bit. And we're often brought up against that because maybe we lose a friend or someone very young, possibly at work. And it does suddenly hold a mirror up and going, whoa, I wasn't thinking about that. So we do encourage people to make sure they have an up-to-date will in place. Now, that's so essential if you have children anyway, and if you have mortgages and assets to worry about. But often by the time people are getting to the retirement stages, a will they made 20 years ago is probably way out of date. So making sure wills are up to date, will encourage people to do that. And again, your organisation might offer access to services as part of your benefits package that can help people to do it. So talking to if for independent, talking to your clients about, do you offer these, can help put the retirement conversation, normalise retirement. The other thing is things like lasting powers of attorney. And most people don't even know what these are because fortunately they've never had to put one in place. But these are where you legally appoint other people to act for you should you have incapacity situation. There's health and there's finance. You need both. Now, many people will get familiar with these things as they reach 50s and 60s because they have older parents and they suddenly realize they need these things in place. Next of kin has no legal basis whatsoever. So lots of people think, oh, well, if my parents in hospital and there's a problem, I have the authority to say what should happen or what their treatment should be or things. No, you don't. Unless you have lasting power of attorney, you have no legal basis whatsoever. So certainly start to think about them, have I got elderly parents? Would this be useful? That's the easy conversation. The more difficult one is, have I got lasting power of attorney in place? And I have to say, I mean, I'm familiar with it from my own parents' situation, and I'm so pleased I did it well in advance of them needing it. But when my financial advisor said to me, have you got your lasting power of attorney? And I was like, I'm not old enough. That's for old people. And then he gently pointed out that any one of us can have an accident on a skiing trip. Any one of us can, sadly be in a car accident, all sorts of other scenarios where actually it would make it much easier for our loved ones to have this. And in fact, what my financial advisor said was, well, I always say once people get a mortgage, they should put an LPA in place, which probably means in their 20s, 30s. And I was quite shocked. So that was a big learning point for me. So helping people know what these things are, having services that they can use. So again, as part of a benefits package, can you make these things available to people?
I think I had a chat with Scott Walker, who is a wills and probate solicitor, and he talked about the aspects from a consultant's point of view as well. So as an independent, either running your own business or in some type of partnership or limited partnership, etc. The importance of also thinking about your organization as part of all these processes. I mean, it's your exit strategy, but the what if the unthinkable happens, then what do you want to happen to your organization or to the partnership and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the time we probably think about our personal aspects of it and don't necessarily think about in context of our business.
Yeah. Who can pay your bills, your company bills for you? Again, if you have a partner in the business, assuming they'll just be able to pick everything up, not necessarily so. I would stress that it's quite a specialist thing. So talking to someone who specializes in this is important. We see so many things where people say, I walked into WH Smith and I picked up their £5 off the shelf paperwork or whatever. Probably okay if you've got no assets and no issues, but yeah, talk to a specialist, because there are ways of wording things and things you won't have thought of. And that's how we can normalize some of these retirement conversations in the workplace, is by just pointing people out to these services.
No, it's great advice. So if we were to wrap up then the sort of the key top tips, or 3, 4, 5 top tips, perhaps of practical steps or ways we can maybe get this into the conversation and get this sort of moving in workplaces, what would be your top tips?
Oh, so many. So first one, normalize it. Normalize the conversation. How do you do that? Part-time working is part of the preparation. So, and we know that's much easier now, which is brilliant. If people do intimate that they are thinking 2, 3, 4 years ahead, and that's when we think the conversation should be, start talking about what's the legacy, what's the succession planning. So actually just putting in succession planning will help both parties enter the conversation at the appropriate moment. And if you are in a situation where you're needing to advise on redundancies, as well as outplacement, think about retirement support for some people as well, because the truth is they won't be going on to another job, even if they are in their mid-50s, or maybe some different lifestyle arrangement. Consider running workshops, and just invite people. Don't invite it openly. Don't pick on people and say, you're all over 50, you should be going. Throw it open and say, anybody who wants to come along. Yeah, and we're not looking at who you are. And try to do it before they've actually handed in their notice. And create the safe space for the conversation in those ways. And think about carrying, think about carrying some resources on a central space somewhere that people can access for themselves.
Great stuff. That sounds brilliant.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your insights. I think it's a remarkable conversation, and there are so many aspects of it that can be unpacked, and that shows how important it is, as every other aspect of our life, to think about it, to plan for it, and to look forward to it as well. So done well. Hopefully people can go on and enjoy their retirement when the time comes. So thank you very much. Really appreciate you sharing your insights and your knowledge on this topic with us. Thank you for tuning in, for listening to us, and for watching this video if you're watching. As always, would love to hear your feedback. So if you found this conversation useful, let us know what you found useful. And if there are topics that you want us to talk about, please do get in touch, and we'll be able to address it in due course. Equally, if you like to be a guest like Anne is today on the podcast, please do get in touch and we'll be happy to help you. HR Voices at hrindependent.co.uk. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of HR Voices. If you have a topic you'd like us to cover or would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media or email us at hrvoices@hrindependence.co.uk. Tune in next time.